Good morning to everybody, and welcome to this first webinar of the Autumn series of the BIP, the Biomethane Industrial Partnership. I have the pleasure to welcome you on behalf of the Secretariat. And before going into the meeting itself, I would like to give you a few instructions. If we can move to the slide, yes. So for your information, this webinar will be recorded, and the recording will be made available online via a link. Also, there will be the possibility to download the slide deck that is presented on our website. And in the course of the webinar, you are able to interact by using the chat and the Q&A section. And please note that the Q&A section include the possibility of upvoting other people's questions. So you're very welcome also to express your interest in other questions. Also quickly on the speakers of the day. So myself, I'm Grazia Vascello, as I already said, from the BIP Secretariat. Then we will have Matti Vikkula, CEO of Biocraft. Then the two speakers from Common Futures, which is the company that took care of the study that will be presented today. So we have first Leo Gray, which is consultant at Common Futures, and Kees van der Leeuwen, which is managing director at Common Futures. And finally, we will have Angelica Cortinovis, which is from Nippon Gases. Also, quickly, we will see the first introduction of the study performed by Matti Vikkula, then the deep diving into the results of this study by Common Futures, the contribution by Angelica Cortinovis, who will talk about the experience of being directly involved in the study. And finally, we will have a Q&A session. So it's my pleasure to give the floor to our first speaker. Please, Matti Vikkula, take the floor and present yourself.
Thank you very much, Grazia. As already said, Matti Vikkula is my name, CEO of Biocraft. In this context, I'm also in the form of co-chair for one of the task forces within BIP. First, an introduction on Biomethane Industrial Partnership by BIP. What's all about? It was established a good year ago between the EU government, Commission, and member states and industrial players, as well as academia, to address the opportunity developing the European energy market as part of the REPowerEU plan. And the purpose is especially to increase domestic energy supply within Europe, in order to address the challenges given by the Russian-Ukrainian war. It is self-evident that also the high energy prices were one of the facilitators or factors impacting the need of this kind of a partnership. And then, of course, thirdly, we are all familiar with the climate crisis and the need to address. How the work is done. The work within BIP is divided in task forces. We have 6 task forces out of 5 are focused on industrial development in Europe, and the 6th one is addressing the opportunities and supporting Ukrainian market development, especially longer term. And as you can see on this slide, we are active with member states level, as well as looking the opportunities for feedstock, raw materials, in identifying areas to be leveraged, but also addressing bottlenecks which need to be resolved, such as, for example, permitting, in order to really be able to achieve the 35 billion cubic meter target, or in the range of 350 terawatt hours, increasing from today's around 30. And then there are activities related to research and development and innovation as well. Today's theme is related with Task Force 4, which has been broken down in different substreams, looking especially for the cost structures of biomethane production, as well as optimizing the injection of the biomethane into gas grid, and identifying also other say obstacles and issues related to the operational processes. Some new dimensions as biogenic CO2 and use of that is also addressed in Task Force 4. Today we are focusing on biomethane production and the costs related. And so basically the study which has been accomplished will cover more or less 10% of the European biomethane production, and can thus be seen as a quite comprehensive study, first of its kind. So having said this as an introduction, I would like to give the word and scene to Leo Gray at Common Futures. So Leo, please go ahead.
Thanks very much, Matti. Yeah, I will bring you through the cost results, as Matti just mentioned. So with our work for Task Force 4.2, we focus on this cost of biomethane production. And to do this, we create a first-of-a-kind anonymous data collection from real industry data. So companies here anonymously and confidentially could submit their data to us, and we would perform this analysis. What we did was we found 17 companies from across the supply chain who supported this effort, with 13 companies submitting data. And as Matti mentioned, this covered more than 10% of the EU biomethane production in 2022. And with these companies, we met up in Brussels together to discuss these results initially, and also potential for cost reductions in the future. So what the initial results, or the main result we have, is that biomethane production costs are between 54 euros to 91 euros per megawatt hour on average in the EU, with our data here being for the year 2021. So with this graph on the right, I'll take a moment to explain to you, as these divisions will come back through the presentation. So the graph shows two bars on the left of a green line, and these bars represent production from an average size plant in the EU. So this is around 300 to 780 cubic meters of biomethane per hour capacity. And then on the right of this green line, we have the larger plant, so over 1,200 cubic meters of biogas per hour. The reason that there's two plants of the same size included is we found that production using public feedstocks, which we found are waste streams from the public sphere, so municipal solid waste or sewage sludge, brought a completely different cost structure to biomethane production. And so that's why we've separated them out. And we'll come back to that as we go through. The major finding of our work is that economies of scale are evident. As you can see here, the economies of scale are really clear between this average size plant and a large size plant. And if we look further at how this comes about, we see that it's really, especially in the capital costs, where these economies of scale are achieved. And you can see the division between the capital costs in the orange, the operational costs in the turquoise, and the feedstock costs in the brown. Another important note here is that the feedstock costs can be negative for the average of all these average sized plants in the EU. And so that's why we made this division, and something we'll dive into now. What we saw from our work is that the feedstock costs had a really large range. So they range from minus 94 euros per megawatt hour of biomethane, that being a benefit to the biomethane producer, or a cost of 43 euros per megawatt hour of biomethane. And we see that this changed based on your feedstock type, and that is seen then there on the bottom in the table. So we had the manure and manure energy crops, this municipal solid waste, food waste, and sewage sludge, and other things mixed in for this public. That's the public feedstocks, and then others. And what we see is that these public feedstocks are the feedstock types that bring about a negative feedstock cost. However, what we were told from the contributors is this doesn't paint the whole story. So feedstock costs don't come isolated. They also incur changes to the capital and operational costs of production. And so we saw what we thought to do was create a total feedstock related cost and to investigate how this looked. So initially here on the left, we have the feedstock mix cost for 3 different types of production with feedstock. So manure on the left, and then the public feedstocks in the middle, and manure and energy crops on the right. And this is for an average plant in the EU. So what we see is that this public feedstock brings this average lower, average benefit to the biomethane producer to produce with this. But if we consider the capital cost in pre-treatment facilities, that is very different depending on which feedstock type you use. And if you use this public feedstock, you have a lot more investment to make in these pre-treatment facilities. We also saw that the operational cost associated with these pre-treatment facilities was also extremely large for, or extremely larger for the public feedstock producers than from other feedstock methods. And then we also considered the compliance costs with national regulation and environmental compliance, sort of administrative costs, that was also something that was influenced by feedstock choice. And when you get all these costs together, you see that despite this really large range in feedstock costs at the gate for biomethane producers, the total related cost of the feedstock choice is not too dissimilar across different production methods. If I go back to our initial graph here, we have split it down again between the capital and operational costs and feedstock. However, we've divided up the production method to see where the most significant cost was. Was it biogas production or biomethane production or feedstocks? And what we saw is that the biogas production investment costs are the largest in the supply chain, and here ranging from 31 to 53% of the total cost. The next most significant cost was also associated with the biogas production, and it was the operational costs, which ranged from 22 to 45% of the total cost. And then the feedstock cost, which in the public feedstock one was minus 19% of the cost, but then it can range up to go up to 23% of the cost. And then we found that the upgrading, though significant and can be up to 25% of the total biomethane production cost, it was less significant than the biogas production. So if we focus more on this biogas production, as it's the most significant investment, what we see is that it can also be affected by economies of scale mainly, but also this feedstock choice, as we mentioned earlier. So if you produce with public feedstocks, the investment costs are on average 80% higher. And if you produce at a larger scale, so this more than doubling of size gives a 2 to 3 fold cost decrease in the investment to this biogas facility. It does bring a question though, what is the investment into a biogas facility? And so we also looked at that. And here on the right, you can see 2 graphs breaking down what we considered for the capital costs of a biogas production. And so we have the civil works, the pre-treatment facility, the digesters themselves, balance of plant, and the wastewater and digestate treatment facilities. And what we saw is that the digesters and civil works are mainly the largest part of this investment to biogas production. However, there is this really notable outliers at the top of the average size plant in the EU today, and this comes from this public feedstock use. So we wanted to remove these outliers, and when we do that, we see that there is a similar cost structure at both sizes if you consider non-public feedstock use. However, the costs are notably lower for production at a larger size, which is the economies of scale we saw before. If we return and then consider what the second most influential cost on the supply chain is, we see it is the operational cost for biogas production. And when we look at this in more detail, we see that the OPEX can increase 3 times as high as when you use public feedstocks at an average size plant today. And we can see even some plants had OPEX of close to 120 euros per megawatt hour. When we look at the influence of scale on the costs here, we see that economies of scale is not as obvious between the two averages, which is the orange diamond, although some outliers remain in the average size plant. But this gives us the indication that as plant sizes increase, these operational costs are where you can gain a competitive edge. And then thanks very much. I'll hand it over now to Kees so he can run you through our conclusions from this work.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Leo. It was a pleasure to work on this. Just recapping, we found average cost based on the 2020 level of 84 euros per megawatt hour for the average sized biomethane production facility at present, but market scale effect showing that large producers have production costs around 54 euros per megawatt hour on average. As said, these scale effects, and we see those especially on the capital cost side. When we looked at this feedstock cost, the huge range from negative feedstock costs, which means that a company or a public authority with waste pays a gate fee to the biomethane producer willing to take in that feedstock, to the positive plus 43 euros per megawatt hour that's paid for some other feedstocks. When we look at the total feedstock related costs, so including pre-treatment and the like, then we find a very comparable number across different feedstock mixes of around 40 euros per megawatt hour. If you look at those average production costs, we see that the large producers could already be cost competitive with natural gas wholesale price of around 45 euros per megawatt hour these days, if you add the cost of carbon, because of course there's a CO2 emission reduction here. But on average, we're a bit above that level. However, having said that, for the final conclusion, that doesn't capture all the benefits of biomethane, because it's not just a replacement of natural gas. It can enable other sustainable processes. It can help reduce emissions in hard-to-abate end uses. If you look, for example, at possibilities of also using the bio-CO2 that you can retrieve in the upgrading process, there's much more value to biomethane than just replacing natural gas. So although we're already in the range of natural gas plus CO2 prices, we think that there's a very strong potential at these cost levels to play an important role in the European energy transition. That's our conclusions. Once more, these were derived through input from 13 industrial companies providing actual cost data from their own operations in an anonymous way. That was a great way to get the real data. And one of the companies that contributed was Nippon Gases, and Angelika Kortinovis is now available to share a little bit of her experience as a contributor. Angelica, over to you.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for attending anyway this webinar. Just a few words about participating in a workshop as this one. When invited, I think that everyone is always worried about the time needed to participate and the time needed to gather the information. From my personal experience, I think that this workshop was organized in such a way that it really did not take too much time to the participants to submit the data, because all the data are already available. There has been a great work from Common Futures and Matti, who was the co-chairs of this workshop, the coordinator of this workshop, to give us perfect instruction to collect the data in an organized way. And from the point of view of participants, I think it was really an interesting insights also of all the technologies, but more so also of all the informations that are within the company that were participating in the workshop. It gave, I think, all the participants the chance to gather the data and analyze the data and update their inside data. And being able to compare them to the rest of the company participating and see where your technologies, your countries stays within the average of the European biogas production, biomethane production. So I think for us, it's been a really interesting and helpful experience. And I thank you, BIP, for giving us the chance to be in this workshop. And then that's all.
Thank you, Angelica, and thanks to all the speakers for the excellent presentations. So we can now move to the Q&A session as anticipated. And thank you for the great enthusiasm, because we got a lot of questions. And the first one I would pose is the following to Leo Gray. Was there an impact of plant sizes or economies of scale on infrastructure that was considered for the study?
Oh, on the infrastructure connecting to the plant?
They specify in particular distribution and transmission connections.
Yeah, oh, that's a good question. We intended, or we had hoped to capture the costs of preparing biomethane for distribution, so the production of bio-CNG, bio-LNG, or indeed a grid connection. However, the responses the data was quite scattered because of the various options to producers, and this gave limitations for data that could be shared. And so hopefully this is something that we can find out more on with a similar process in the future. But unfortunately, this work couldn't answer that question for us.
Thank you, Leo. Then we can pass to the second question, which says, by compliance cost, what do we mean and what is included?
That's a good one. So we asked the contributors to consider national regulation administration costs and also environmental reporting costs. So we left the specifics there up to the contributor themselves, but that was our indication of what should be included there.
Thank you also for this one. Then the third question received, it's about negative costs. And the audience was wondering why there is this item, these negative costs on the municipal waste mix.
Yeah, I can answer that one. For the municipal waste, to take care of that, there's always a cost incurred. And if a biomethane producer is prepared to take over the municipal waste from the authority, then the authority can pay a fee for that. So that then you start with a negative feedstock cost, but as we have shown, it's not so easy to prepare these feedstocks for the biomethane production. So the biomethane producer incurs more cost to make it a suitable feedstock for the biomethane production, like the pre-treatment. And in the end, that also makes for a good business case.
Thank you very much, Kees. Then there is a very detailed question. They would like to know how it's specified, how costs are specified per cost item, meaning in the biogas production, for example, is it included anaerobic digestion solely, or also anaerobic digestion plus upgrading, separation and liquefaction of CO2?
Yeah, Leo, maybe describe exactly what is included from the first feedstock to where we stop the analysis.
Yeah, sure. So we began with the pre-FID costs, which are also included in this study. And then for the feedstock costs, we asked for the cost at the gate for the producer. And so that includes the transport costs to the site. For the biogas production facility, this includes the civil works, the digester themselves, the pre-treatment facilities, the wastewater and digestate management facilities, and also the balance of plant. When we looked at the operational costs, we considered the cost of labor, the cost of services, this compliance cost, which we've mentioned before. We also had the cost of external energy use. Unfortunately, we couldn't put a cost value on the internal energy use, but that's also something we would like to improve upon. And then for the biogas upgrading, there was the civil works again, the upgrading technology itself, balance of plant, and if required, gas handling costs included. And again, the operational costs were similar to biogas production. There was also additives and pre-treatment operational costs as well.
And indeed, another question is on CapEx, and they ask if all the plants considered include a compost hole. Talking about pre-treatment post.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not sure if I fully understand, but if it maybe is something I can address in an email afterwards if it's a bit more detailed for me to understand, because I'm not sure what is meant by that.
Okay. Then another question to Kees is whether the study considered the costs of connecting to distribution and transmission, and how these may vary across Europe, and what drives this also.
Yeah, in general, it's of course very important. The reason that biomethane is produced is that it can be used across Europe via the existing gas grids. It can be fed into the natural gas grid, but that takes work. Of course, you need the connection. You sometimes need a larger connection than was there previously. You may need to apply so-called reverse flow, so to bring biogas from a region with a lot of production to the medium pressure level. And those are investments that are in the realm of the gas distribution operators and transmission operators. We did not look into those costs in detail here, but there's a task force 4.4, a group where these grid operators are also participating, that's looking into this, and I think results from that will become available next year.
Indeed, I can confirm this. There is this work ongoing in this other subgroup of the BIP. Then another question for you, Kees. When referring to costs in euro megawatt hour, What time frame is that based on? Is it the lifetime of the plant?
Yeah, so we took for the capital cost, I mean, the OPEX is clear, the operational cost is just as they are incurred, but we translated the capital expenditures, so the capex, the investment in various elements of the plant, we translated that into a capital cost, assuming a weighted average cost of capital of 10%, I believe, Leo, to translate then into annual cost. So 10% of the investment is available for the capital cost in our analysis on a yearly basis, taking into account lifetime, of course.
Thank you, Kees. Next question is about digestate treatment, and the question is, what treatment did you consider as a standard?
Yeah, for us, we were more interested in the cost of the digestate facility from the contributor themselves, and so we didn't ask them to specify what their standard or what their type of digestate treatment was, but we were more interested in what the cost was incurred to them of having this digestate treatment facility. So I'm afraid I couldn't tell you what the standard was.
Thank you very much, Leo. Another question is, could you explain what civil costs are? In this, I would address it to Kees.
Yeah, so I'm not sure if we call it civil costs, but the cost of the civil works are in general the foundations, etc., that you need to lay for the buildings and the installations. So the concrete that has to be put in place to build your facility on, that kind of cost, and the infrastructure, the physical infrastructure.
Also, another question, which is based on a comment, actually, is considering that costs differ from country to country, which are the countries included in the study?
We're not completely sure. So it was an anonymous way of collecting data. We know, of course, which companies took part in our, which companies were the contributors, but we did not ask, the installations on which they reported were often many per company, and we did not ask exactly in what countries those were located. On the other hand, we have pretty good coverage, as Matti already pointed out in the beginning, so we have 10% of the total installations. You can be sure that the countries where there are many installations are well represented in the sample, but might be an improvement next time to also ask for the country where the installation is based.
For sure, point taken. And another question is, how are the costs of feedstock expected to change in the coming years, considering the growing demand for new AD sites?
Yeah, that's a good one. We did not do forecasting. This exercise was purely to get a good state-of-the-art overview of current cost. The reason that we took 2021 was that because of the attack of Russia on Ukraine and all the associated energy and material price movements, the costs have temporarily gone up and sometimes already going down again now. But looking into the future was not part of this work. That would be super interesting. One of the things is, of course, that you can streamline equipment manufacturing, etc. But very important result of this study is the scale effect. So if we gradually move to a larger average, then the average cost of biomethane production will come down. One other aspect is that when there is, for some reason, a strong increase in demand for biomethane, and we saw that when natural gas was super expensive in 2022, then there will be a pressure, of course, on the whole value chain. It cannot, within a few weeks or months, you cannot ramp up production. So then everything becomes more expensive, including feedstocks. But we see that as temporary speed bumps in the development. And yeah, we think that there are still good opportunities to work on optimizing the value chain, but not studied in this work.
Thank you, Kees. The following question is, what do you consider as a large and small producer, and how many standard cubic meters per hour do both small and large producers produce in this sample?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the presentation we just showed represented an average size plant in the EU, which is between 300 to, I believe, 780 meters cubed per hour biomethane. And for the large plant size, we selected over 1,200 cubic meters per hour of biomethane. So
those were the two bins in our analysis where we had lots of data points, so statistically significant. So that's why we chose these boundaries. You can find those under each graph. The categories are defined by their size. And also a good opportunity to point out that the report is downloadable from the BIP-Europe website. I'm sure that will appear later on, but there you can have a look in detail, and it's all explained.
Indeed, so everybody is more than welcome to download all material presented today on our website, but the link will also be provided. And let's pass to the next question, which is, how do you see the development of production costs for the coming 5 to 10 years, and which elements will increase the most?
Yeah, that's basically what I talked about in the previous question. So not a subject of this particular study, and I think I already gave my initial thoughts on that, but very important topic to work on for the Biomethane Industrial Partnership as a whole, of course.
So we said no forecasts were included. And following question is the total cost of substrates, if the total cost, of substrates is remarkably similar across all the substrate categories analyzed, does this imply that the substrate with the highest methane yield is the most profitable one?
Not necessarily, because I think we calculated and presented all the costs in terms of euros per megawatt hour of biomethane produced. So the efficiency is already in there. So you can have feedstock with fairly relatively low methane yields, but if the cost of the feedstock and all the associated costs are also modest, then it can still be profitable business. So in the end, that levels out, and we present the cost per megawatt hour of biomethane actually produced.
Thank you, Kees. And the following question is, if the costs associated with digested management were included, how much would the amount increase? If the increased amount is roughly from 0 to 55 euro per megawatt. I'm not sure if I got completely well the question, but if you understood.
Yeah, that's okay. It's also a good question, and so what we found with our study is that the capital costs of the digestate handling was considered with the biogas facility. However, the operational costs of the storage and transport for digestate was not, and indeed in our report we gave an indication that this could be from 20 to, I believe, 55 euros per megawatt hour of an operational cost here. However, we also see in the future that digestate can be turned into a co-product even of biomethane production, and can give value to the system as a whole as a biofertilizer, and that is also something we see that will potentially occur in the future. And so, although there may be a cost associated with this now, which we could capture again in a future study, we believe that this cost should be replaced by a benefit in the long run.
Thank you, Leo. And the next question is the sulfur content and removal of big influence on the operational costs, and was it taken into account?
Yeah, that again is a very good question. So we asked questions on the pre-treatment and additives added to the digester as a whole. So we didn't consider the different volatile solids or sulfur content of that in the digester that needed to be removed, and so the operational costs associated with its removal may be there implicitly, but not. We didn't explicitly seek out what the cost of this removal was. So I'm afraid I can't really speak to the cost there.
Thank you, Leo. And I would say that considering the time, we have unfortunately to close the Q&A session, and I would leave this last part for some conclusive remarks from Kees and Leo.
Well, yeah, I just wanted to say that it was a real pleasure doing this work, and thank the companies for taking the time to supply the data. And I think it's one thing I take away from the work is that it really shows the potential for biomethane on a cost level now, with this only looking at it as an energy carrier, but also with its future roles with that potentially digestate and bio CO2 and improving local economies and sustainable agriculture. That to me, biomethane seems as a really crucial option as an energy or as a part of our energy future going forward. But I'm not sure if you have anything to add to that, Kees.
Well, no, fully agree, Leo, and was great to work on. Thanks again for all the companies that put in a lot of effort to bring these real cost data to the table. I think it has clarified a lot for us ourselves, but hopefully also for policymakers. And I know that companies also like to be able to benchmark their own cost structure with the industry. So I hope we've made a nice contribution together with all the companies to the know-how on biomethane. And I would also like to thank the participants. Thanks for your strong interest, for your stream of questions. And it once more shows that this is a very hot topic, and super glad to have been able to contribute here.
Thanks to both, but also to all the speakers of today's webinar. And I take this opportunity to also flag to all participants the upcoming 2 webinars of the rest of the autumn series. The next one will be on Thursday, the 7th of December from 2 to 3 p.m. And it will be on R&I needs for biomethane production technologies, a study performed under the lead of the DG RTD of the European Commission within the context of Task Force 5. And following this one, there will be on the 14th of December another webinar, this one on EU-wide potential assessment for feedstock production in marginal and contaminated land, where the study was performed under the guidance of the Joint Research Center. So both very valuable studies to complete this webinar series. And please feel free to register via the links that will be put in the chat as I'm speaking. More information on what was presented today are available on the slide deck that you can download on our webpage of the Biomethane Industrial Partnership. And also feel free to reach out to the Secretariat anytime for questions, for also joining the BIP if you are a keen stakeholder interested in working on these and other subjects. Thank you to all again, to all the participants, and see you soon for the next webinar.